All right, before we start this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, I want to thank you guys all for watching the show and tuning in. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do. If you listen to the show in podcast form, please leave a positive comment for that, because that is appreciated. If you are looking for legal defense for self-defense, please check out US Law Shield and use the code RSWC. And if you are looking for new cell phone carrier service, please go to Patriot Mobile, and you can start with Patriot Mobile. I think you get 1 month for free. And it is Patriot Mobile, and the discount code is RSWC. So we greatly appreciate that, and we hope you enjoy the show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Today we are coming to you from Hartford, Connecticut, and I have Rick Patterson from Liberty's Keystone, which is a consulting group. Rick,
Exactly.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Shake my hand, sir.
Charlie, always a pleasure, man.
I'm excited to have you on the show. This is going to be pretty cool. You've been doing stuff for a long time. You worked for the NSSF. You helped set some of the standards for SAAMI. You've worked with Second Amendment Foundation, or SAF, to do stuff at the UN. Like, this is all really cool stuff.
So it's interesting. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. How do you get tied up? How do you become a gun guy? How do you get involved in all this stuff? What did you go to school for? What did you want to do in life?
Oh, geez. How did I end up in the gun world? That's how long is our show here?
The batteries do run out.
I was actually in the oil business.
Really?
I was area sales manager for one of the Fortune 50 petroleum companies, and one step below VP. I was, 30 years old, and VP spot came open, and I didn't get it. Understandably, there's a guy who'd been with the program longer, had similar success. I get it, but I still wasn't happy about it.
Sure.
And my stepmom, wonderful lady, she's one of those people who, she'll see an article or something and just jot a note. Hey, I saw this, was thinking about you. Hope you have a great day. And she saw an ad in my dad's Ad Age magazine for this national shooting sport something or other position. And, I was the shooter, hunter, competitive shooter, IMSA AAA state champion and all. And so she sent that to me. I'm like, oh, what the heck? I'll put my resume together and send it out. And they're like, well, this position is filled, but your background is interesting, because I was dealing with branded service stations, bringing them up to image, environmental compliance, business planning, all of that. And that's what my team did. And I said, we've got this issue with shooting ranges, and it's similar, the image, the environmental concerns, et cetera. If you're up for the impossible challenge, let's put something together. And okay, I was hooked. And I ended up, creating the NSSF shooting range program, and, wrote all the manuals, developed the 5-star shooting range program, the Where to Shoot website, et cetera.
Oh, that's cool.
Did a lot of work with the EPA and OSHA on the lead management. That was becoming a big issue. The Violence Policy Center had published their document, Poisonous Pastimes, which is a blueprint on how to shut down a shooting range. If you can't get them on the noise protection, which the NRA had done a great job state by state passing noise protection ordinances, then here's how to do it by, accusations of lead poisoning. And so we put together the science behind metallic lead in soils and how that would apply to managing a shooting range, put together a management plan. EPA was getting active in this arena because they were getting so many calls from people that were, trying to shut down ranges. Went from there and, put the whole program together in partnership with EPA. And it worked in terms of giving ranges a proactive effort to protect themselves going into the future. So that's kind of the long story of how I ended up getting started in the gun side of things.
Right. I think that the whole noise thing is kind of interesting. I belong to this club. It's the Worcester Pistol and Rifle Club. I've been a member there for 20 years. And the across the road from us used to just be woods,
Right.
right, and surrounding us was just woods. The half mile down the road is a school,
Okay.
which is interesting when you say, yeah, you pass the elementary school and then the range is on the left. But there was a neighborhood that was there, and then someone bought land and started to develop it, and then somehow they ended up finding a spotted toad.
Oh,
and
geez.
then they put the kibosh on building the housing neighborhood there, but they eventually somehow got it worked out. And then they had like, I don't know, a half a dozen houses, and then it got to be much bigger than that. Over the last couple years, people have bought the area, the strip of land that goes from where the road is to where the range starts,
Okay.
and they built houses there.
Oh,
And
so right on your doorstep.
It is unbelievable that behind, like, the driveway, the range is over here to the right. There's the driveway. There's the woods. It's not even woods anymore. It's just this ground that goes up, and then there's a big fence, and then people's duplexes.
Right.
You're like, holy moly!
Right.
That's a
Exactly.
little insane.
And if the home buyer doesn't do their due diligence, they may not know right off the bat that there's a range there.
Right.
We've had instances of real estate agents deliberately withholding that information, and I've heard from some ranges that a real estate agent would call and say, "Hey, can you stop shooting between this time I'm showing the house?" It's like, no.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding?
That's not the right thing to do there, Mr. or Miss Real Estate Agent.
No kidding.
So yeah, it was a big challenge, but part of that too was kind of understanding EPA's motivations, and quite frankly, how does somebody in a government agency get ahead and build their career? Well, they have to champion a new issue, and they need to get more people working for them. Neither of which are necessarily in the best interest of the American taxpayer,
Right.
but that's how it works. And so here was a new issue with the opportunity to get some staffing to work on that. And part of it is letting issues die down too.
Right.
There really wasn't a technical issue there. It was a political issue.
Yeah.
And so sometimes success is just being able to stall it out before you get some draconian law passed on a knee-jerk reaction.
So when you were working for the NSSF and for SAAMI, was it all about how to make ranges safer and build ranges so there's no lead contamination when you're shooting outdoors and stuff?
Yeah, from the shooting range program, NSSF shooting range program, it was every aspect of developing and operating a safe and successful range. 30 years ago, ranges successes were measured by the user groups. The gun groups would measure and call success based on the number of members you could bring to the gun group. The critter groups would rate a range as successful because of how much money they could raise for the critter group. The governing bodies for the shooting organizations, how many registered shoots do they hold? And in reality, those are important functions of a successful range. But a successful range is one that is here, today, tomorrow, next week, next generation, serving the shooting public and serving those important roles. And so it was really kind of creating a fundamental shift in how shooting ranges were viewed themselves. So it was creating every document from how to develop a shooting range, which was basically a guide to a feasibility study, how to put together a feasibility study to make sure you had a demographic capability and a potential customer base to support the range going into the future. To all of the safety concerns, berm development, and community relations. Being an important part of the community and being recognized as a contributing part of the community is important as well.
How do you determine what's a safe distance? How tall a berm has to be, how thick it needs to be? Like, how do you determine all that stuff?
Yeah, it depends on the kind of shooting that you're doing and that you want to do. And you know, for instance, the most basic is with shotgun. You know, lead pellets have a maximum distance. You know, number 9 lead shot, I think, or I'm sorry, 7.5 lead shot will travel about 770 feet, maximum range. Okay. So, you know, if you've got 770 feet,
you should be clear.
You're clear, exactly. You may have a tailwind, so you know you'll don't want to have it right at that number. Right.
There's a house right there at 771. Right.
Exactly. So you know, you've got that aspect, but it's really establishing the range rules, and you'll see on most shotgun ranges no shot larger than 7.5 because that's how they've figured out the range. Gotcha. So it's not so much that there is a safe design. It's a combination of the design in concert with the rules that ensure safety. And you know, the example I would bring is, you know, you take a sports car, you know, and you can operate that in ways that are very safe, that if you had, you know, tried that in a Suburban, you're going to get into serious trouble, and vice versa. So it's operating the range in you know, the coordinating the design with the operating rules.
Do you get to go out to the woods or to the desert and determine, like, hey, this is how far this stuff travels? Like, do you get to go someplace and give all this stuff a try?
We were not set up for individual range visits and consultations. It was really you know, providing the overarching materials. Gotcha. So that a range can read through that, understand it, and put that to practical use in their own situation, because every situation is different.
Yeah.
One of the things that we saw, I remember one community was trying to stop an indoor range, and they were demanding that the parking lot be totally enclosed, bulletproof, with double bulletproof garage doors, because a firearm could potentially discharge while they were carrying the firearm from the car to the range. So it would have to go through this bulletproof tunnel, you know, to get to the range itself, which it was just, you know, absurd.
This goes back to one of the other things that often happens. If the anti-gun folks can't come after taking our guns away, then they just make everything else that's ancillary to it difficult and expensive and impossible.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
There was, man, I've always heard this story too. There was, where was it? It was up in Londonderry. I'm going to say at the Londonderry Range up in New Hampshire. I was friends with a guy that teaches there, and he was saying that there was somebody that brought in a whole cartridge to the police and said this ended up in their yard.
Yeah, that's not uncommon.
So it happens in a lot of places.
Exactly.
Where someone brings a whole entire cartridge, brass, primer, and bullet, and says this ended up in the yard.
Right.
They're complete idiots. Is that in the playbook of in the book that you got there for the violence policy?
Yeah, I don't know what they've. No, that was not one that they had specifically in there. They were
right.
A little more discreet. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yep. So
you've done a lot of stuff at the UN for Citizens Committee and for SAF.
Yeah, originally with SAAMI, you know, when the executive director's position came open at SAAMI, with all the work that I had done with you know, NSSF and the shooting range program and working with regulators, you know, when that spot came open, they asked if I was interested, and I took about, I don't know, a nanosecond to say yes. Then one of the things at that point, the UN was starting to get very active in the gun control arena. Kind of came out of the dissolution of the Soviet Union. In a weird sort of way, having two superpowers, the US and the Soviets, they kind of controlled arms movements throughout the world. When the Soviets were gone, the UN said, we better step in a role. And of course, the left organizations jumped right on that, and they were starting down the path of gun control regulations with the program of action in 2001. So I got NGO status for SAAMI, and we played a large role with some other organizations in addressing some of those threats. And again, a lot of it was education. Getting the NGO was kind of interesting, because the way it worked is, at the time, they've completely changed it, but at the time it was consensus, which the UN generally works on. So one no vote, and we would have been denied NGO status.
Really?
And there were 6 objectors, and I found out what countries were objecting, and met with them. And Cuba was just because we were American. Okay, they had they had to spend. Colombia, because the U.S. has a gun problem, they don't have a drug problem. Stuff like that. But the difficult one,
they don't think they have a drug problem.
That was their comment. So a lot of it is, hey, they had to make their statement. That's fine. The interesting one was Germany, because Germany at the time was pushing for a required marking of ammunition, which of course
required marking as
in marking and tracing, as in serial numbers on there.
And micro stamping.
They had a company that had a patent and had lobbied the government to require use of their patent. It happens all the time, to implement their patent. Right. So they don't have to actually do the real engineering of, how do I make this work? How do I fit a unique serial number on a 22 cartridge?
On something the size
but they don't have to figure that out. They force somebody else to figure it out, and they just collect the royalty check. And so Germany was pushing for that, and I had an opportunity to get before the UN and answer questions, and Germany hit me with that one, and basically was like, if you don't support our call for marking of ammunition, we're going to vote no and keep you out. What is your position on that? And it was hey, all of us have different perspectives. We have different levels of information and knowledge, and all of us sharing that information is important to getting a successful and actually useful regulation that will do something. Otherwise, pass a regulation, pat ourselves on the back, but we will have accomplished nothing. We bring important technical information to that. And they circled back and said, I don't think you answered our question. And I basically gave the same answer. And then then the chair said, okay, anybody objecting to SAAMI's application? And, I'm sitting up at the podium waiting for a hand to go up, and no hands came up, and the gavel came down. And it's like, congratulations, you're in. So that gave us access to the UN, and that allowed us to do a couple different things. There's really kind of 2 UNs in a way.
Okay.
There's a political side and there's a technical side. For example, the technical side, the transportation, and particularly transportation of dangerous goods, TDG, very relevant to shipping ammunition and ammunition components. And there's a political side, which is pushing for the gun control regimes. And on the political side, I kind of joke around. We talk, they ignore, then put out a press release how we engaged in robust dialogue. But we actually can keep the worst out. In the technical side, it actually works very well in terms of, if you can have a real discussion on technical merit and change regulations, and we've succeeded in doing that on a number of different fronts. Probably the biggest one is when I first came on board with SAAMI, talking with the SLARAC committee, which is the SAAMI Logistics and Regulatory Affairs Committee. SAAMI works under a committee structure. All of the voting members and alternate members have a seat on each committee, and so the SLARAC committee, all of the committee members, I gotta say, I miss working with the committee members.
Yeah.
Just great people, incredibly knowledgeable, and really dedicated to what they do, and just good people. But went to SLARAC and said, okay, knowing what you know, what's our biggest threat here? And one of the biggest threats was the world stage was really working towards unifying shipping regulations, and it was being pushed by multinational companies. They don't want to deal with 193 different shipping regulation requirements, and every time they cross a border have to change all their packaging, etc. So they want one set of packaging. And in the US we had ORMD, other regulated materials, class D classification, and that precluded spending money for hazardous fees for shipping of ammunition. Well, the UN did not have anything resembling ORMD.
Really?
And so when that shift happened, we would have lost ORMD, and the shooting public would be paying for hazardous materials fees. So we actually lobbied the TDG, the Transportation of Dangerous Goods Committee, came up with the science, showed them the science. Part of that was our DVD on sporting ammunition and the firefighter, and showed the properties of ammunition in various scenarios that a first responder might come across, and did some lobbying. And Ben Barrett was really the lead on that. And again, technically excellent. When I say technically excellent, these are people who, mention a particular issue. Oh yeah, that's page 365, subsection 2, paragraph 3, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, just incredible knowledge. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And all of this, though, is so essential to the shooting public, but it just happens so behind the scenes and whatnot. So anyhow, and he handled the technical aspects, but he also did a great job with the politics, and we got that passed. And ultimately that saves the American shooters alone. At the time it was some $400 million a year that they would have had to pay extra for their ammunition. So that was, an example of some of the things we get involved with. Kind of esoteric, kind of boring, but kind of important too.
It really is important, because it affects everybody. It affects the competitive shooters, the hunters, the recreational shooters, the people that, and there's tons of people that want to get a license and have a gun to have a gun, but maybe don't go out and shoot it very often. It affects everybody, anyone that uses ammunition. Exactly. So you've got those two different sides. On the political side, it's always more control. The left, the civil society organizations, and particularly the Soros organizations, pushing their socialist ideals through the UN. They have a very, very close relationship with the UN. A lot of the organizations, Amnesty International, and we all know the names, associated. They work with them on a lot of issues, and some of them, getting clean water to a particular area, a good thing. So they've got this working relationship. It makes it easy for them to push the gun control aspect to it. And we've seen some attempts. They have discovered, for example, that firearms are durable goods,
And if you stopped the sale of every firearm today, you'd still have hundreds of millions of firearms that will last for a century. So they've realized that ammunition is the way to go. So they're doing quite a bit to try to curtail ammunition, and go after ammunition as the choke point that will get them where they want to go the quickest. So we've seen a lot of efforts to try to get ammunition involved. There are several different UN instruments that each addresses a very unique aspect. And what they're trying to do, one of the things they're trying to do, is combine all of those into one massive gun control scheme. Well, the International Tracing Instrument works fine for firearms, but if you combine that with an ammunition component, well, now you've got to trace, mark and trace ammunition, which the logistics behind that are mind-boggling, impossible. They know that.
Right, and it boggles my mind. I get that people don't know what they don't want to know, right? Or they don't know what they don't know, and having to put some sort of a serial number, particularly on .22 ammunition, not just because it's small, because there's so much of it, right? And you eventually get to the point where your micro stamp is going to have numbers all the way around the bullet.
There isn't enough space. I mean,
there's not.
And just simple logistics. And if you look at rimfire, for example, some of the high capacity, high production machinery will turn out 1,800 rounds per minute. Now imagine putting a mark accurately on every single one of those. Now you have to match that mark to the exterior box, and it has to be a 100% accuracy. What happens when you have a mismatch? What happens if a particular cartridge gets kicked out because of a QC, a quality control issue? Now, do you put a little slip of paper in there that says, sorry, we can't have this here because it doesn't, thanks for your contribution to the global gun control scheme. Those are some of the challenges that are faced, and it comes from every angle and that you can imagine. I think the biggest one coming up right now, you've all heard of the Arms Trade Treaty.
Yes.
They did it was the first treaty that they passed by majority vote. And that becomes significant because when you've got consensus, you might not get everything that one particular special interest wants, but you get something that all of the countries can agree to. Right. Well, the left pushed for this gender aspect and controls to international arms transfers that a whole bunch of countries, and primarily the ones that you most want to have monitored, are not going to agree to. So they went to majority vote, they got what they wanted, but it ended up a failure. I mean, the countries that are the biggest offenders of arms deals are not party to it. But it really was an attempt by the NGOs, the Soroses, to have veto power over an arms transfer. Basically, it says a country has to evaluate the possibilities of use for gender-based violence or human rights violations before they can ship a product to that country.
That sounds ridiculous.
Pretty much, and what very clever though, and everybody knows George Soros.
Right.
His son Alex has taken over, and I think he has a complete socialist mentality. When Mamdani was elected in New York City mayor, avowed socialist, Alex Soros was quoted saying, "I've never been more proud to be a New Yorker." so very much a socialist look at the world, and I think he's more aggressive and in some ways more clever than his father was, and therefore more dangerous. So what they did is they then turned around and they said, set it up so that NGOs could submit a paper and have a paper admitted into the official UN library. Well, the implication of that is NGO decides they don't like country X.
Yeah.
They put a paper into the UN library that says country X is bad guys. Then if somebody tries to ship arms to country X, the NGO can turn around under the ATT, sue the exporting country, and quote their document that says, hey, here it was in the UN library that says these are bad guys, you can't ship guns to them. So they can control, the NGOs, Alex Soros can control who gets the guns in the world.
Right.
And that's ultimately what they tried to accomplish. The UK was one of the lead countries in pushing for the ATT, and I think this is absolute karma that the first country sued by the NGOs under the ATT was the UK. And of course, the judges say, hey, it's up to the countries to decide what's in their best interest for their foreign policy. And so they have not been successful at all. And the ATT is failing, and everybody recognizes the ATT is failing. Countries aren't even making their financial donations, and so they're coming up with their 5-year plan to try to reinvigorate, and that's a dangerous process. And right now we don't have anyone from the firearms side that's really involved in that. There's a couple organizations that show up and monitor. They're not active. They're not engaging the delegations. And you have a group that will show up and videotape their ridiculous speech to bring back home so they can try to fundraise off it. And it actually hurts the cause as much as anything because it makes us look foolish. But the biggest danger now is they're shifting focus from the countries, and they're trying to go after the companies. And what they're doing is pushing for a mandatory requirement for countries to do certain, what they call human rights due diligence, which countries do work with the country to provide key information, but ultimately it's the country's decision. They're trying to make it so it looks like the company's decision, and they can sue the company. Now, a government has the resources to fight any lawsuit. A company has to be concerned with being sued into bankruptcy, which was the city lawsuits from the 2000, where you hold the companies responsible for the criminal misuse of their product. And it's basically the city lawsuits in the US from 2000 on steroids, and that's what they're pushing for right now.
To me this sounds like it's the same thing that's going on with Glock in California, in Chicago, and I think there's another. Philadelphia wants to sue Glock. Glock doesn't make a Glock switch,
right?
But Glock is not responsible for the Glock switch, even though they call it a Glock switch. And you can't keep track of criminal activity,
right?
Like all this stuff, it's already illegal to possess a Glock switch. It's already illegal to manufacture a machine gun. By adding this, it's already illegal. They can't do this stuff already.
Right. It's illegal to drive a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol. But that's not the car manufacturer's responsibility.
Right.
And so, I was successful working with delegations and particularly emphasizing the idea that this human rights due diligence kind of undermines the country's ultimate responsibility for making a decision for arms transfers. And we were able to kill it in the ATT. But the proponents of that just turned around and said, okay, we're going to go to the Human Rights Council. And the Human Rights Council has already put out 2 documents that lay out a framework for holding companies responsible for the criminal misuse of their products and creating mechanisms for mitigation, victim compensation, from the companies. So they're just trying to make it impossible for a company to do business and dry up supply by drying up the companies and manufacturers.
That's crazy. That's ridiculous.
They think it's clever, but yeah, it's evil.
It's right. If they had to fund this themselves, right,
Mm-hmm.
it would be impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But and this turns into the whole thing where we say that they're using we have to use our money to fight them against using our money,
right?
Because they get all the tax money, the government money.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the government doesn't have money; they have our money.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and the money trades between the UN and the NGOs is mind-boggling in and of itself. The UN right now, however, is in a financial mess. So I don't know that that's necessarily the worst thing. We'll see how that plays out.
Gotcha.
So, but the UN's involved in other areas as well. For instance, they get involved in the lead ammunition issue.
Right, and you were saying this before we started, that lead paint, lead and gas. What was the other thing?
Yeah, lead and paint, lead and gasoline are the
yes.
ones that are well known, and the people trying to push for bans of lead ammunition are deliberately misleading. Everybody knows lead is bad. Well, they banned lead in paint, they banned lead in gasoline, and we need to ban lead in ammunition. Well, the lead in paint and the lead in gasoline are organolead compounds. These are man-made liquids that are completely separate from the metallic elemental lead that's used in ammunition. Completely different properties, etc. But they play on that lack of information on the part of the public.
This sounds just like all the anti-gun stuff.
They
play on the lack of information. No kidding.
Exactly. So we've had to work with that. It pretty much started with the Condor. And that's a whole nother probable episode.
I do remember hearing Ted Nugent say, if you want to, what does he say? If you want the Condor to survive, then what you do is put a hunting season on it, and then they repopulate when there's a hunting season on it, and people have the opportunity to hunt them.
Yeah, I think the issue with the Condor goes back way before then. They feed exclusively on large mammal carcasses. They're a scavenger, and their world was woolly mammoths and giant sloths.
Right. And
when that disappeared, they lived on the fringes. They also need cliffs and whatnot for their nesting. Bison. We wiped out the bison. That left them pretty much along the Pacific coast and feeding on whale carcasses at a time when the whaling industry pretty much wiped out the whales. The only thing that really saved them then was you had the European settlers coming in with livestock, and animal husbandry was, far from an exact science. There was a lot of losses and the carcasses from cattle and sheep that kept the condors on life support. And as animal husbandry got better, you got down to 22 condors that were left in the wild. And, there's a big debate within the Condor recovery team. Do we pull them all in? Do we pull a couple in and start, an artificial program? And they decided to pull them all in and then put them back out without anything changing. So it's kind of a moment in and of itself. But the bottom line is the Condor's World still did not exist, and they were spending $40 million a year at the time to create a zoo without walls. They had, supplemental feeding of the birds, and they had to come up with an excuse of why they were failing, and they came up with lead poisoning, which had never really shown up in any of the previous reasons, and threats to the condor. Pesticides did, of course. And so they picked on lead as the justification for the failure of the program and the need to continue the feeding, etc. And so that kind of started that aspect.
Right.
We actually created a working group. I met with the Condor Recovery Team Executive Committee, and we set up a working group. And Susan Reese from NRA, Bob Byrne at the time with Wildlife Management Institute, Bill McGrath with SCI, and myself. And we worked out a voluntary, education. Okay, here's some potential risks. Here's some things if you choose that you can do. And we were just about to launch that, and Center for Biodiversity filed a lawsuit. Everybody lawyered up, and that was the end of that. So that was probably my biggest disappointment, because we had a chance to combine, hunters with other groups interested in the outdoors and the common effort, and all killed by a special interest legal group, Center for Biodiversity, and so that was disappointing. But they, the bottom line is they didn't really get very far with the condor issue, so they turned around and said, "Oh, the bald eagle, bald eagles are being, suffering from lead poisoning," and people were pointing out, but bald eagle populations are exploding, and it's been taken off not only the endangered species but the threatened species list. So what's the risk here?
What's the real problem?
And so then the antis went after the human risks. And, as they said, they didn't have to prove that there was a real risk to mammals. They just had to scare mom.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was their efforts there.
This really goes to show you that the anti-gun folks will not stop.
Right.
They won't stop at anything. If the if one tactic doesn't work, then they go after something else. And if that doesn't work, then they go after something else.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, they go after something else.
Yep.
And it just never ends.
Exactly. And there was close cooperation clearly between the anti-hunting and the anti-gun groups. For instance, we referenced in our first meeting of the Condor Recovery Team, this lead working group, we pointed out that, hey, the Brady Center, I think at the time, has on the home page of their website a whole big thing about lead poisoning from condors. Of condors and how bad that is, and that doesn't help anything. It's just that just gives people, this is just an anti-gun initiative. That was cleared off their website in hours.
Really?
Now think about the logistics on that. If you're just an outside organization with no contact with them whatsoever, and you call them up and say, "Hey, we'd really like you to change your website for us," no. There had to have been a closer relationship, and somebody knew somebody and had influence there. They had a relationship. So, yeah, exactly. And but the international efforts are there. These groups are very, very connected, very coordinated, and they try to whipsaw from one country to another. Take the REACH issue in the EU. REACH is the most comprehensive chemicals regulation that's ever been promulgated. It's the registration evaluation and authorization of chemicals, and lead got onto their, top priority list, and that would call for the banning of all lead ammunition, and it was on a fast track. They held ECHA, which is the European Chemicals Agency, held a meeting in Helsinki, and a lot of the groups were pushing, well, there's not enough science here, and pushing that angle to it, and a lot of that was just dismissed. And we have to be flexible, and we have to go after the unique aspects to it, and we have to educate on what the risks are of implementing these proposed regulations. And REACH exempts military and law enforcement from their regulations. So they can still, if they banned lead ammunition, they could still make lead ammunition for military and law enforcement use. And my point in that meeting was, that's all well and good, but military does not have enough production capacity to make all the lead bullets. And please understand here that, manufacturing a bullet isn't a case of, okay, slide lead in this end and out comes a lead bullet. Right. And when you're done with that, just slide copper in and out comes a copper bullet. You have to completely change your entire manufacturing process. And Mauro Silva's head of the European ammunition manufacturers had pointed that out, what it would take to transfer over. And it's like, but here's the deal: since the military doesn't have the capability to manufacture all of their needs, they look to the civilian marketplace as their strategic production reserve. Mm-hmm. So you get into a conflict, and the military is going to have to rely on the commercial production in order to be able to sustain conflict. And not long after that, Russia invaded Ukraine, and it kind of hammered that point home. Right. So hopefully we'll be able to stop it there. But they whipsaw back and forth. Okay, over here, look at this law they passed over here. And this is the baseline, and so you have to do better over here. And oh, look what they did over here. Now you guys have to bump it up because this is the new baseline. Very coordinated, very very sophisticated in their approach.
It's interesting to me that that smart people, that is a blanket term. Mm-hmm. Smart people don't realize that somebody has to make the brass, somebody has to make the lead, someone's got to make the powder, someone's got to do all of this, and then someone's got to ship it and handle it, and there's so many pieces of so many people and so many businesses that are involved in all of this. Mm-hmm. And it's like when people talk about serializing guns and serializing gun parts. Well, if somebody makes a little a pin, a straight little piece of metal that's small and flat and round and doesn't do anything, that's got to have a serial number on it. Right. That's ridiculous. But you need these in order to manufacture the guns and make them and make them function and go bang. And having all of these different businesses that are part of the ecosystem of making guns or making ammunition.
Yeah, and there have been big pushes within the ITI, International Tracing Instrument, to include marking multiple parts. And of course, parts are all interchangeable. Yeah, so, absolutely. You mix and match all of that. First of all, you have the additional costs of having to keep track of each individual part. You also have, it's estimated there's a 10% error rate on input for searches, et cetera. And as you mix and match parts, you just introduce more and more uncertainty in the identity of purchasers, transfers, etc. And that's a defense lawyer's dream.
Oh, yeah.
And so you actually, by making it more complicated, you give the defense, you give the criminal more opportunity to get off the hook in terms of, that piece of evidence. So, it sounds good. More is better, right?
Right.
But the actual application and implementation actually is counterproductive. So, and a lot of that is an education process again, and but you have to be there, you have to be interacting, you have to have relationships established with these delegates, in order to
make all this happen,
make a difference, and keep things where they need to be, where, we all want a safer world, what's the best way to get there? So, and back on the lead issue, as boring as that is, there's basically scavenger birds are the most at risk from lead because of a highly acidic digestive system, and holding material in their digestive system for a long period of time allows the grinding and breakdown of lead into lead salts, some of which may be toxic. We got involved with the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species because they had taken up the cause of lead ammunition and held a meeting in Spain of this lead working group.
Yeah.
And it turns out it was in conjunction with the vulture working group, which would arguably be the most at risk from lead ammunition. And they were invited to our meeting, and they gave the draft of this comprehensive evaluation of the risks to the scavenger birds and vultures. And it was an amazing document. I mean, broke it down, by ecologic region. I mean, just a tremendous amount of work, very, very well researched. Nowhere in there did it identify lead ammunition as a risk.
Really?
In any region. Nowhere.
Huh.
And of course, the proponents of the lead bans, oh my gosh, how could you not have found that? And fast forward to the next CMS, Conference of States Parties. Every year a treaty has a meeting of all the parties, and they talk about how it's going, and do we need to change anything? And they presented their report, and there's this section on lead ammunition and the potential risks from lead ammunition. It's like, it wasn't scientifically supported, but there it is politically.
Unbelievable.
So yeah, exactly. Frustrating.
Yeah.
Actually.
Sorry. So we have a few minutes left. Let's talk about what you do in retirement.
Oh, okay. I'm just doing some consulting. Different projects. I was representing SAF at the UN, but financially it's expensive to participate at the UN. Easy to monitor from an online and write a report, but to actually be there, interacting, and building those relationships, it just gets, you have to focus your efforts, and different little projects. It's kind of, in a way, it's kind of fun because, companies don't call you until they've exhausted all their other internal options, so you've got this impossible project and problem, and it's like, getting your teeth into that is just a lot of fun. I do kind of miss the being part of the team, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it is fun doing the problem solving, and heck, a lot of the times I can do it with a phone call, but it's not very profitable, by the way.
So when I'm looking for careers, that might not be the one.
Exactly. I'm on the board for Citizens Committee for Right to Keep and Bear Arms. We're in the middle of doing something right now, a pilot project of regionally setting up meetings for state associations,
Yeah.
so they can get together, share information. Here's what we're facing, here's what works, here's what didn't work. So
Right.
we're all facing the same problems. We might be at different areas, parts of that curve, and rather than having everybody try to reinvent the wheel, let's share information.
This is going to be a really cool event, and I think by the time I put this out, it's probably going to have passed. But it's the New England Firearm Advocacy Conference, and it's going to be on May 30th in Chicopee.
Yep.
And this is something that Holly Sullivan's been talking about wanting to do for a long time.
Yep.
And it is important for states to get together to figure out what's happening, what's going on, and why it's good, and why we should talk together.
Right.
I'm actually heading to a dinner tonight here back here in Hartford.
Oh, okay.
With some of the guys from the CCDL board that were able to get hunting on Sundays.
Okay. Right.
And this is something that, honestly, hunting on Sundays has only been a thing in Massachusetts for about a month. The only other state that doesn't allow hunting on Sundays is Maine. And I think the Massachusetts governor, Maura Healey, wants to do this because she's probably going to be losing a lot of votes for hopefully all of the gun owners in Massachusetts. But she wants to make herself look a little bit better, in the eyes of people that are hunters.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that should be a great event. We've been doing something similar on an international scale, the World Forum for Shooting Activities, and again, we're all facing the same issues. We're facing the same, concerted efforts. We're at different places on the different individual topics, but how can we work better together? And that's really going to be a key to our success. So I think that'll be a great event. Holly's doing a great job at putting that all together, and kudos to her in that effort.
Are you going to be speaking and doing a presentation? Are you coming?
I don't know what my role will be there yet, or not. So Holly and I haven't had that conversation. So stay tuned.
I get to be the MC for this.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, listen, well, how can people find you and all the stuff that you're doing at Liberty's Keystone?
Oh, my website, libertieskeystone.com, libertyskeyystone.com. And reach out. Happy to help out. Heck, it's a passion for me, and just enjoy being able to help the industry and the community. And on a more local level, I'm also president of the Washington Rod and Gun Club and the Laurel Bank Fishing Club.
Cool.
Getting involved in some river
fly
river
fishing. So it's something you really like, huh?
It's yes.
Very cool.
Yep. I build bamboo fly rods and tie flies, and I was one of the founding members of the board of Project Healing Waters Fly Fishing, which uses fly fishing and fly tying to help rehabilitate wounded warfighters.
Oh, that's cool.
Greatest opportunity I wish I never had. These are amazing people.
Yeah.
Use the word hero and they will rebuff that at every opportunity. And say I was just doing my job, but that's not what makes them a hero. You look at what they're facing. The injuries are horrific. The impact on their lives. If they had a relationship, a partner before, that's pretty much over. I mean, everything is taken from them, and they get into that deepest part of hey, has God forgotten me? They're just in a really bad place, and to come from that place and pick themselves up and restart their lives in a different with different challenges, and to go out there with a smile, and adapt, and just incredible examples of such a tremendous human spirit and the strength of the human spirit, and really the link between nature and the human spirit is just awe-inspiring. It really is. So yeah, just a tremendous opportunity doing that. So
That's
yes,
awesome.
a long answer to yes, I like to fly fish.
That's great. All right. Well, listen, Rick, thank you so much for being on the show.
It was my pleasure.
This is a pleasure. It's like getting my own little GRP speech about everything that's going on. It's really cool. It's interesting. It's interesting that everything's interconnected. You know, and this is the stuff that's going on behind the scenes that people don't know about. So it's important to get all that out.
Yep. Yeah.
This is great.
Rather boring esoteric. So thanks for tuning in for an hour, whatever.
Right. It's all good, man. It's all good stuff. Let me button things up. All right. So we thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to put links to Second Amendment Foundation, the CCRKBA, and we'll put a link to Liberty's Keystone also as well. We thank you guys for watching the show and tuning in. If you made it this far, you should share it with your friends, because that is how we get the stagecoach across America. We'll see you guys next time.